Welcome back. This is the Ben Shapiro Show. So Joe Biden's poll numbers are starting to look not so great these days. According to Gallup, his approval rating has now dropped to 50%. That is a 6-point dump since the beginning of June. He was at 56% in June, which was very high. He is now down to 50%. He's got 45% disapproval. He is likely to sink probably a little bit further before all is said and done. And there are a couple of factors here. The first factor is that, look, he is not an articulate human being at this point. He's obviously losing it. The fact that he's obviously losing it really had no impact so long as people were in a good mood about which way the country was going. But it is very disquieting when the country appears to be sort of stagnating. And at the same time, the president of the United States can't speak English anymore. There's a clip going around online of Joe Biden saying something. No one seems to be able to discern what exactly he is saying here. There's some theories, including "my butt's been wiped" was the big theory on Twitter. I'm not going to attest one way or another. All I can say is that, like Laurel and Yanni, you hear what you want to hear. Here is the president of the United States saying something incoherent.
What must be what? What must be what? What must be what?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what he's saying there. I got nothing. Got nothing. He could. I mean, not implausible. The only question is whether it is Ron Klain who is doing it or whether it's the establishment media at this point. But again, none of that would matter if the country felt positive about the direction in which we are moving. The country does not feel that way. According to ABC News, a majority of the public now say they are pessimistic about the direction of the country. That is a marked change from the roughly 1/3, 36%, that said the same in a poll published May 2nd. So in essentially 2 months, we have dropped from 64% of Americans saying they are positive about the direction of the country to only 45% saying that they are positive about the direction of the country. In that early May survey, Americans were more optimistic than pessimistic by a 28 percentage point margin. Optimism is now underwater by 10 points. Looking ahead to the next 12 months, fewer than half, 45%, now report feeling optimistic about the way things are going. That is a significant drop from about 2/3 in the May poll, and that has happened among every subgroup. Optimism is down about 20 points among Democrats and Republicans. It is down 26 points among independents. Among Democrats, about 71% say they are optimistic about the direction of the country over the course of the next 12 months. There are a bunch of issues that are playing in here. The biggest issue, obviously, is this rapid uptick in the number of COVID cases. Now, part of the problem for the Biden administration is that they set the goalposts wrong. And because they set the goalposts wrong, everybody's kind of freaking out when they shouldn't be freaking out. The goalpost should be, can you get a vaccine? If the answer is yes, we're done. That's the end. We've reached the end. Go back to work. If you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't. Be smart. Get the vaccine. But if you don't want to, your problem, right? Then we would be done. And people would be optimistic. They'd be like, okay, yeah, it's still out there, but I'm vaccinated and so I'm okay. Or I'm unvaccinated, but I chose not to get vaccinated, so it really is like my problem at this point. Instead, because the Biden administration set very early on zero COVID as the goal, right? The pandemic being over didn't mean that it would still be moving through the community and hitting people who are unvaccinated. It meant there would be no COVID. Because that was the goal, now, whenever you get these headlines about unvaccinated people getting COVID, people freak out. Yes, and unvaccinated people get measles, mumps, and rubella. Unvaccinated people get polio. It turns out that vaccinations are effective at preventing the transmissibility and or the serious symptomatic presentation of diseases. This is a thing that we have known for a very long time in public health. But if you set the goals wrong, then you got a problem. And the reason that the Biden administration set this goal is because if they had set the goal as, when do we get to open up life again, then they would have had to actually have an honest debate about whether Andrew Cuomo or Ron DeSantis was doing things right at the height of the pandemic. They didn't want to have that debate. They simply wanted to say that lockdowns were, in fact, in and of themselves, a public good. They didn't want to have the debate, and so they set themselves unrealistic standards, and now they got some troubles on their hands. Whereas I can guarantee you that in countries that basically said, yeah, we're probably going to have to learn to live with this thing, like in Florida, Ron DeSantis' numbers, pretty stagnant. He's been saying for a while, you're going to have to make your own decisions. You're individuals. Live your life. And now that the vaccine's available, I honestly don't know tons of people in Florida who are spending a lot of time agonizing over this stuff. Because you can go to any Publix and get the vaccine right now. You can. And you have two choices in American society. You can get the vaccine or you can get COVID, and there is no third choice. The Delta variant is just too transmissible. But there is this widespread belief and paranoia about it. It's exacerbated by the media, of course, because the media has to make it seem as though risks to the unvaccinated are risks to everyone, which is not true. So every time you see a breakthrough case, they're like, wow, Delta's going to break through and wreck the vaccines. Lockdown time. That is the only way that you can convince vaccinated people they ought to start masking up again, or that you can convince people that their kids ought to be masking, is by suggesting that doom is right around the corner, even if you're vaccinated. So, the Biden administration is having some real problems at this point. According to the Daily Wire, a new poll indicates 1.8 million Americans have turned down job offers in order to stay on unemployment insurance, which it turns out when you pay people to stay home, they're like, hey, sounds great. Morning Consult surveyed 463 out-of-work American adults at the end of June. 13%, roughly 1 in 8, said they had refused job offers while unemployed because they had, quote, received enough money from unemployment insurance without having to work. Others said that childcare obligations, worries over COVID-19, and a lack of job flexibility limited their willingness to take new positions. Because 14.1 million adults were collecting benefits at the time of the survey, Morning Consult calculated that roughly 1.8 million Americans turned down jobs due to the handouts. Under President Biden's $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan, the federal government funded $300 per week, enhanced unemployment insurance, a policy that has caused sluggish labor market recovery. 26 states, all but one of which are led by Republicans, have therefore opted out of the program. Also, 9 of the 10 states with the most robust labor market recoveries have Republican governors. 9 out of 10. Meanwhile, all of the bottom 10 are run by Democrats. That is not a shock. There was an entire report on NPR talking about the differences between unemployment rate in Massachusetts and New Hampshire, which were very close in terms of unemployment rate before the pandemic. Now, Massachusetts has like twice the unemployment rate of New Hampshire. Why? Well, because New Hampshire turned down the unemployment benefits and said, no, we're just not going to do that. We're not going to do that. It turns out that the Democratic policies are a giant fail. They are not succeeding. And this means that Democrats they must condemn all of their political opposition as evil, because if it comes down to who's got more effective policies, they have a real problem on their hands.